Does Ethan have any weird growths on any part of his body?
Does Kyle like D&D or not?
Does Ethan write any books about things other than possums?
Where does Kyle get all his ideas?
How many bastard children does Ethan have?
Why is Kyle... How does he get his hair like that?
All these questions and more answered this Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, 6 p.m. Pacific. We are doing our first live stream. Well, not technically our first, but
we did
kind
one
of
a long
time ago
in my garage.
Yeah.
But our first official professional live stream, live Q&A here on the Babylon Bee YouTube channel.
You ask questions. Subscribers get top priority. So start asking the questions. We're going to answer. We're going to interact in real time with you as if we're sitting right there in your living room.
That's right. If you
or
are
wherever you watch videos.
If you're a paying Babylon Bee subscriber, there's going to be a post on the website where you can submit questions. So look out for that in the premium section. If you're not, you're a peasant, and you're going to have to wait until the YouTube thing goes live, and then you can start asking us questions in the chat.
Either way, we'll see you then
Wednesday.
On the Babylon Bee live stream. Wednesday,
August
11th
at 6
p.m.
Pacific
time.
Bonesaw. That's all I can think about when I talk about professional wrestlers. Bonesaw.
Such an MCU dork.
That's not MCU. That's Sony.
It's Marvel.
It's Marvel, but they sold the film rights to Sony. It's not an MCU property.
What have I stepped into here?
Hey, today we're talking to Kane / Mayor
Glenn
Jacobs.
I almost said Glenn Campbell.
No.
Glenn Jacobs.
Mayor Glenn Jacobs.
I just want to call him Mayor Kane. But yeah,
so I knew we were interviewing Glenn Jacobs, and then someone said, "Oh, you guys are talking to Kane," and I was like, "What?" And then I realized they were the same person.
You knew about Glenn Jacobs before you knew about Kane?
I saw it coming up on the schedule. I think on our schedule is Glenn Jacobs. I look him up. Oh, Mayor.
Yeah, I think that's true. I just saw some guy named Glenn Jacobs.
Someone's like, "Oh, you're talking to Kane," and I was like, "When's that interview?" They're like, "It's the same day." I'm like, "Oh, it's the same person." So this is actually really cool. He's a WWE wrestler and
like
libertarian mayor.
Undertaker's sidekick
son
or something
right?
crazy like that. And then they fought, and then he nailed the Undertaker into a coffin and set it on fire at one point because I guess they had a falling out or something. And so he's the mayor now in Tennessee.
Yeah, we didn't ask him about this, but it would be so cool to be in a WWE writer's room.
Yeah, I would love to know about that.
I'd like to just figure out. We should find a WWE writer and interview.
Dan, find us a writer.
But that's not who we're interviewing today. Today we're interviewing Kane, who is also a libertarian mayor in Tennessee, mayor of a county, and the dude's smart.
He is. He's incredibly smart. He always threw me off. We'd ask him a really dumb question. He'd do a really smart answer.
Yeah. So you see those wrestlers and you're like, oh, they're just big dumb oafs. No, he sits there and reads giant tomes with a pipe in his mouth.
Yeah, English literature major. So take that.
Let's check it. Let's
just go talk.
Let's jump into the ring.
Yes.
Are you ready to
Glenn Kane
rumble?
Let's lay the smackdown.
Well, welcome, Mayor Jacobs. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you, y'all? Oh, and by the way, you made fun of me for saying y'all, but it is an official word of dictionary.com now. It's one of 300 words added this year. So very happy to see that.
There's a lot of words on dictionary.com, though, that probably shouldn't be.
Hey, y'all is an inclusive word. It's one of the most inclusive words there are. So
it's true. And we don't.
Well, and in English, we don't have an appropriate second person pronoun. Like in Spanish, they have ustedes. And we just say you, but you can mean you, or you can mean you as a group. So y'all is actually a great word. It's one of my favorite words.
Yeah, we have no second person plural.
Yeah.
Here in California, we say you guys.
Yeah. Do people get and it's also less offensive if you are worried about your pronouns, calling somebody y'all, it covers everything.
It's very genderless and inclusive.
Very true.
I never thought about how progressive Tennessee is.
Yeah. That's the influence of Mayor Jacobs here.
Bringing everybody together.
I don't necessarily know if progressive is the right term, but thank you.
So here we are interviewing progressive Mayor Glenn Jacobs.
Please don't say that.
I'm going to get him in trouble.
So, pretty excited about the fact that I'm also interviewing WWE superstar Kane. In case you guys didn't know that, they're listening and watching this.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm kind of an addict of. I didn't watch a lot of wrestling, but I watched a ton of wrestling documentaries. I have a fascination with the behind-the-scenes world of wrestling. So that might be a good lead-in question. There's so many wrestlers that have like pretty messed up lives and pasts and stories. What is the difference with you? I mean, you're walking around in a suit. You got like I was reading that you have like a degree in literature, English literature. What's the difference or is that just the bad guys get kind of the stories and you don't hear about them?
I think that's a situation where those stories are interesting to people, much more so than those of us who are much more mundane, regular people. But I can tell you that most of the folks in WWE and most of the people that I've worked with over the years, we're just average folks. And there was a lot more, I think, prevalence of the wild personalities back before I got in the business, probably right when I was into the wrestling business. That was sort of tapering off. I don't think you see as many of those stories now. But yeah, so much of it I think is the fact that, it's just people's fascination with something different. And in some cases, unfortunately, something really bad, as you pointed out.
Do you think there's almost like an advantage to being a guy who's in a mask? It kind of like you can compartmentalize your celebrity a bit.
I don't think the mask did that. My personality is that way. I've never been like, oh gosh, I'm this WWE superstar. That's just what I do. It's my job. It's what I did for a living. So I was able to, as you say, compartmentalize. I think it's just more of staying grounded, realizing that we're all just human beings. And, certainly in my life, I've had a wonderful life, but there have been points where if things had gone a different way, my life would have gone a completely different way. And I'm very thankful for that. I've been very blessed. And I really think that's probably, for me anyway, the most important thing.
So you want to tell us a little bit about your story? I mean, you're wrestling, and then all of a sudden you're like this mayor dude. So you want to explain like what was going through your head? You want to defend that decision a little bit?
Do I want to defend that decision? Certainly getting into politics. Yeah.
Did you hit your head a lot?
Maybe that was.
For me, I'm very much a libertarian mindset. I always say I'm a libertarian conservative in that my belief system, as far as political and what I think the government should be doing, is libertarian. I think the government should do as little as possible because anything that it does do restricts our freedom to act. Now, of course, we don't want people running around killing each other or stealing and that sort of stuff. So certainly you have to have a framework so that doesn't happen. But when you're delving off into all these mandates and personal choices that really don't impact anyone else or don't hurt anyone else, I don't think the government should be involved with that. My own life, I'm actually, I'm a pretty conservative person as far as you were talking about. I've never gotten to the wild stuff. I'm the most boring person in my personal life just because those are my beliefs. But I don't believe the government should mandate those. I don't believe the government should force my beliefs on someone else as long as they're not hurting other people. And unfortunately, really since almost the founding of our country, we have this idea that the country is founded on these ideas of liberty, which we never really lived up to, but that was the rhetoric, which is awesome. But then we've gotten to the point now where they're under attack. I mean, and all the time from all angles. In my own life, I grew up on a farm in Missouri, and if you'd asked me, what are you going to do with your life? I had no idea, and it certainly wouldn't have ended up where it ended up. But I had these tremendous opportunities throughout my life that just, popped up, and I'd work hard and take advantage of them, and something would happen, and I'd hit a dead end, but then another opportunity would come up. And I just, was able, because of that, to live a life that I never would have thought was possible when I was a kid growing up on a farm in Missouri. That's the American dream. It's the ability to create the life that we want. And that's what we have here in this country. That's actually what makes this country so special is our ability to do that because of freedom, because of the free market system, because of the free enterprise system. I want to make sure that my kids, my grandkids have that opportunity. Ronald Reagan said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And for me, it's just doing what I can to make sure that it's not my generation that extincts it. And I think that's very important. That's why I got into politics.
Nice. So you talked about, not hurting anybody, but you did lock the Undertaker in a coffin and set it on fire.
Yeah, he deserved it, though.
Did that violate the non-aggression principle?
Well, Kane's not a libertarian. Trust me, he's more of a tyrant.
He's an authoritarian. He's kind of he could be Antifa or something if he wanted to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They need a guy like that. Yeah.
He's got more upper body strength than Antifa.
That's true.
Yeah, that's probably true, actually.
So I keep struggling between talking about. I don't want to over talk about wrestling, but it's fun. So describe the chokehold the taxation has on the American people.
Especially when we look at the federal government versus your state and local governments, right? Who does the stuff that people think a government do? It's your state and local governments.
Right. Yeah.
We do the roads, we provide the police force. In some places, it's the fire department. Actually, here in Knox County, that's private, but still, all the stuff that people, when we think of government, it's the local and state governments that do that. The federal government has a clear mandate under the Constitution that it's basically, supposed to act as an arbitrator between the states, supposed to ensure against invasion and provide a military for national defense. That's it. I mean, if you read the Constitution, there ain't a whole lot more than that. There's other stuff like, coining money, which actually, when they talked about money, they weren't talking about just printing money. They were talking about gold and silver as money. But in any case, it was a very small mandate. Where do we pay most of our taxes to now?
By far.
The federal government. Yeah. We have a $4 trillion budget. So when we think about what our tax dollars go for, they go for social welfare programs from the federal government. Okay. All these restrictions from the federal government, not from the states. And if you look at the Constitution, again, the states were supposed to have most of the power and the feds had minimal power. So income tax is a huge issue because it's really taxing productivity, right? With the progressive income tax, you get punished for doing better and actually rewarded for not doing as well. When we look at other is there a good tax? No, there really isn't. I mean, everything has its impact. So overall, I'd like to see taxes as low as they could possibly be. I think that the income tax is particularly offensive because of the nature of that tax. I think sales taxes are much, if you're going to fund the federal government, I'd like to see, some sort of consumption tax as opposed to an income tax in that way. But the more you tax people, the more money you're taking out of the private sector and giving it to the government. And you're actually destroying the private sector's ability to create wealth, which is where wealth comes from. I mean, my friends on the left will swear government creates wealth. Government does not create wealth. It siphons off the wealth from the private sector. It can't create it itself. So obviously, the lower your overall taxes are, the better. Here in Tennessee, we have the third lowest state and local tax burden in the country. People are flocking here because they're tired of the high taxes in other places around the country. So they're voting with their feet, and it shows. And our economy is thriving. We're doing really well. So not only do you have the kind of theoretical, but you also have in reality, you see what happens with the low tax jurisdictions in contrast to the high tax jurisdictions.
I have a couple of questions. Number one, what is the best barbecue in Knox County? And also, what's the best Nashville hot chicken that you've ever had?
All right, man. So you're gonna put me on the spot because we have a lot of great
voters, man.
Yeah. But yeah, we're actually foodies down here, so we have a lot of great restaurants. Can Calhoun's was voted the best ribs in America a few years back. Their ribs are awesome. A Dead End Barbecue has great barbecue. Archer's Barbecue is pretty awesome. Let me see who else I'm going to leave someone out. But those are three that you can't go wrong with, and there's some others as well.
Can I just real quick? I need to out Kyle. He says he doesn't like barbecue.
Well,
we just went to Nashville and you revealed this to me.
It's a complex.
What's wrong with y'all?
It's a complicated issue.
It's a complicated issue.
We introduced him to Nashville Hot Chicken, and he's crazy about it. The office is sick of him ordering it now.
I just order Nashville Hot Chicken all the time.
Yeah. So, and that's fine. I mean, if you don't like barbecue, that's
He's
personal
laughing at me.
decision.
He's making him laugh.
I'm not going to criticize that. I mean, it is strange. It's odd, but
It's very odd.
It's how I want to live my life, and you're a libertarian.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, dude. I mean, hey, be as strange as you want, dude. Knock yourself out. Don't like
It's my lifestyle choice, bro.
Best hot chicken. Actually, there's two. One is Jackie's Dream here in Knoxville, which is awesome, and also Gus's world famous fried chicken has some killer hot chicken.
All right, noted.
I'm making a note right here.
He's noting it.
You can also get barbecue, I think, at Jackie's if you like, but since you don't do barbecue.
Should I go? Should I leave?
Like identify as a unicorn or something less controversial. So let's see here. What else we got in the questions? You refused to enforce COVID restrictions. I saw you tweet this. What do you think the impact has been from COVID restrictions, and do you think? Oh, what's the impact of COVID been on your area with those policies? And do you think maybe they just steer clear for fear of their own safety from you? The virus. COVID is real and it's dangerous. People. What bothers me is folks will say like, "Well, you didn't take it seriously." No, I took it seriously. And it's just like now with the vaccine debate. I'm for people making their own choices, make an informed choice. I think the vaccines are a good thing. Okay. But people also should be allowed to make their own choice. Well, somehow that makes me, in some people's mind, an anti-vaxxer. No, that's absolutely not the case. And it's the same with this, because I resisted government overreach when it came to COVID restrictions. People say, well, you didn't take it seriously. No, I took it very seriously. The problem is that when I look at the documents that I swore to God that I would do my best to defend and protect, governments can't do what they did in the United States with these restrictions. All right. The Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment both provide for due process. So government just can't say your business is closed because, in wide swaths, they have to say your business is closed for this reason. You have a right to appeal that. You have a right to come and say, what we're accusing you of is correct. And then you have an opportunity to correct that. And that's not what happened. They just closed businesses. The masks, never before in history have people that were not infected been subject to government mandates and regulations. Okay. Now, if you're sick, certainly, the government can say, you have to be isolated, you have to be quarantined, you have to wear a mask. The government can do those things, but you have due process. Okay. The government can't just say, we think everybody's a risk, so we're going to do. That's not how this whole thing works. And I think now what we're seeing, the CDC today, this is Tuesday, the 27th, the CDC has just reversed itself on mask guidance. Well, it's just back and forth, basically, because frankly, some bureaucrats are making decisions in Washington, D.C. that have monumental impacts around the country. When we look at the lockdown data from around the world, the lockdowns, they didn't work. Okay. We see the spread is pretty much the same everywhere, and that's because it's a virus, and virus will do what viruses do. And it's also obvious that you can lock people down, but when they come back out, if the virus is still there, what's it going to do? It's going to spread. So all you're really doing, I understood the rationale initially, to try to alleviate stress on the hospital systems. Mm-hmm. But it went from 15 days to flatten the curve to 30 days to stop the spread. And then it just became almost infinite.
And there's a price to pay
slogan for that.
I mean, when we look at mental health, when we look at suicides, when we look at lost learning in schools, when we look at, in my opinion, the overall anxiety and stress level of society, it's just gone through the roof. So two reasons. I didn't think the government had the authority to do what was done in many places. And I also don't think that people actually looked at the risk benefit. I think they thought there were certain benefits and they didn't realize that there were certain risks. And because everybody was so alarmed, and granted, it was, it's very scary. I'm not saying it wasn't. But everybody was so alarmed, they just jumped on board and said, we need to do everything possible, instead of taking a clear-headed look and actually saying, is this going to work? And in America, the government is there to protect your freedoms. And that's what Thomas Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence. So we have to allow people to make choices, even if we don't agree with those all the time. And when we take that away from folks and government starts this overreach, it's very hard to stop and it's very hard to get back.
I mean, if anybody knows about wearing masks, it's Kane.
Yeah, you think you'd be pro-mask.
I look at the image search, and you used to wear a full face mask, and that must have sucked to wear that in the ring.
No, it actually wasn't too bad because it sat up my face and it could breathe.
Like a little air conditioner in there or something?
Not really an air conditioner, but there was some airflow. Okay. and that's the other thing. I think, there was airflow so I could breathe.
Yeah, that's true. But eventually you changed to a mask that opened up your nose and mouth. It's a new style. Would you recommend that for COVID?
Good.
Just to scare it away? Because that is pretty scary looking. Threaten it.
I mean, again, whatever works for you. And you can eat barbecue with that mask.
That's right.
That mask, which makes it double better.
It's way more.
And hot chicken if you like, yes.
Prefer. Yeah, it seems like there's both. It seems like there's a couple of different philosophies of government that you see. You sound like you have faith in, you trust you trust the people,
fellow human beings.
Yeah,
that voted for you or whatever. And you're like, they can make their own decisions. They're smart people. Whereas a lot of our leaders seem to just despise the people that they're supposed to be serving, or not trust them at all, or something.
And there's an inherent contradiction there. If you're going to allow people to vote for folks that have a lot of power, like the President of the United States, but then you're saying we can't trust them to make decisions in their own personal life. Well, how can we trust them to choose the person that literally has their finger on the button that can destroy the world? So there's an inherent contradiction within that thought of, we can't trust people to make the right decisions. Well, if that's the case, you can't trust them to vote. And
they voted for you.
They all voted for you. And we always hear so much about the importance of democracy, and I think democracy is important. So it's the choices not only that they make at the polls, but it's also the choices they make in their personal life. We have to respect those.
Hey, are you enjoying this interview?
Oh, I know I am.
Oh, I sure am. I'm actually probably sweating trying to think up new questions now.
Yeah, this very moment.
But if you're enjoying it, you should become a Babylon Bee subscriber because the interviews are much longer.
Yes, and we also have the most fun because the portion of the interview that does not go up here on YouTube publicly can be Googled, so our guests kind of kick back a little bit and get a little looser.
They tell us what they really think.
And we always do our 10 questions, which for everybody and tends to be the funnest part of the show.
Yes, so become a Babylon Bee subscriber at babylonbee.com/plans, and you get the full interview show, and you also get it a day early. Do it now.
Now, in the WWE, you probably witnessed the effects of head injuries and things like that, and some people saw. What's your assessment of President Joe Biden?
That's a great question and putting you on the spot. WWE actually banned not only chair shots, but anything to the head with foreign objects years ago because they realized, once the data started coming out on the CTE and how big an issue it really was, they stopped all that stuff. When I don't know how to say this, I'm trying to say this. I think, President Biden, when you watch him speak, and he's always been somewhat gaffe prone, it's gotten a lot worse. So I'll leave it up to folks to make their own determination. But, Yeah, I'll leave it up to folks to make their own determination.
All right. Very measured.
But yeah. If you could pick any president from history and throw them off the top of a steel cage, which one would it be?
You have to throw them on to thumbtacks.
Oh, on to thumbtacks.
Oh gosh. There's actually quite a few. Actually, probably the number one would be LBJ. Because he got us. He ramped up the Vietnam War and the Great Society. So he was the worst. And there were some, there's others that were not great, although were really bad. But when we look at the double whammy of the warfare state and the welfare state, I think he's the epitome of that, and we're still dealing with that today. He was a big guy too. That actually might be a pretty good match. I think he was like 6'2" or 6'3". So I might have to tussle with him a little bit before he gets thrown off.
That sounds like a wrestling move too, the LBJ.
It sure does, doesn't it?
The lock, bite, jab. I don't know. Well, who would be the ultimate wrestling tag team? Politician. Presidential tag team.
Me and the president, gosh, man. It would be me and George Washington. Well, if you're saying I'm part of the tag team.
Sure, yeah. Sure.
It would be me and George Washington because, we can look at criticisms of Washington and, certainly many of those are valid. But frankly, the country just wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for George Washington. He was the most important and the greatest person in American history.
All right.
So, man, okay, that was a short answer. I need to come up with a good question fast.
Well, George Washington also fought, in a war. So
he did fight in a war. That's true.
Not many presidents can say that.
How about this? Do wrestlers still get really mad because there was this? Who was the guy that got punched by? For the reporter that got punched for suggesting wrestling was fake.
Yeah.
Economy guy.
David shows John Stossel, who's actually
Stossel's the guy. He got punched on camera.
Stossel's a good libertarian.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of influence on my thinking. Years ago, we told the public that it was entertainment, and I still don't like when people drop the F-bomb when they say it's fake.
Sorry.
Yeah, despite the fact that
I didn't say. I was saying they say those guys.
Yeah, thank you. But no, seriously, if we say, oh gosh, it's all fake, well, so is movies, so is TV, so are novels, so is so much of entertainment. And that's the idea behind it is, we're there to entertain people so that they have a good time. The stories are about good and evil. They go back for as long as mankind's been around. So, if you look at it through that light, it mixes the best to me, drama and sports together. And it's really the only one that does that. The only form of entertainment does that to that level. It doesn't bother me when people say that. The connotation bothers me because it's just like, oh, you don't care and it's stupid and blah, blah, and, whatever. That's a personal opinion again. But as far as the entertainment value, I think that's very real. And that's what I try to concentrate on.
So WWE is basically Shakespeare.
Well,
Shakespeare in tights with suplexes. Yes.
Shakespeare and suplexes.
And chairs until recently.
The name of your book or something. That one's free.
Well, yeah, I think when I was watching that episode about that and one of these wrestling documentaries, I kind of started to understand that, wrestlers go through a lot of actual pain. These guys get slammed, get all over the place, and also all kinds of injuries. And to say that's not fake. Have you got any injuries left from your wrestling career?
I was pretty fortunate. I didn't have too many traumatic injuries. I'd hurt my knee playing football before I ever got into wrestling. So that bothered me all through my career. I broke my hand. I tore a bicep tendon and had some pretty bad cuts on my head and stuff. But that was really about it. And for the length of my career, I was very fortunate that I didn't have anything worse than that.
Nice. So have you always been a libertarian-minded kind of guy, or did something kind of get you into that? What drew you to that? Is there authors or influencers or Like I said,
Yeah,
head injuries or something. I don't know.
It was actually this could be the headline of the Babylon Bee tomorrow.
Okay.
It was actually a professional wrestler whose gimmick was a porn star that did it for me. When I was a kid, my parents were kind of Goldwater conservatives. They were small government at the time people, but it wasn't like politics or something we talked about all the time. Got to college and sort of got indoctrinated into the socialist mindset a little bit. Then got out of college and realized, hey, that stuff doesn't work. When you get out in the real world. But I was trying to figure myself out. And I couldn't determine where I landed, right? Whether I was conservative, whether I was liberal, because I strongly agreed with fiscal conservative policies. But this is back when, the Republican Party was all about social conservatism, and I'm like, I don't care as long as you're not hurting anyone else. I have as I said, I have my own way of living my life, but I don't care what people do at home, so long as it's consensual and no one's getting hurt, it's none of my business. So I couldn't figure out where I was. And then my friend Sean Morley, who was Val Venus in WWE, said I sounded like a libertarian. And I told him if he insulted me again, I was going to punch him in the nose because I didn't know what a libertarian was. I never heard the word before. And that just, it kind of got me going down a rabbit hole. I started reading a lot more about libertarian philosophy and eventually into economics as well, and realized, that's what I believed. And I was kind of shocked that a lot of other people and a lot of really smart people actually agreed, believe the same thing. That's it.
That is all. I liked that we heard the Tennessee train there going behind.
Yeah, sorry.
That was cool. It felt very Tennessee. I don't know, like a train going through something. The one thing I'm kind of wondering about, you talk about libertarianism versus conservativism. And one thing that's interesting to me is, like, with how insane the left has been lately, it feels like there's this realignment. So I like to pick people's brains I'm more libertarian, but I feel like I'm kind of cool with, like, republicanism and conservatives now a lot more than I would have been, 5 or 10 years ago, because it feels like the threat from the left has been so much greater. I'm curious if you're seeing that too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Especially when we look at very prominent people like Rand Paul,
right.
Mike Lee, Thomas Massey, and you can see that alignment of, and Ted Cruz too, that they're all kind of, they might have their differences on certain things, but overall, it's, hey, individual choice is really important. Individual liberty is really important. And the left now has taken on such an authoritarian tone with everything, that I think that the natural allies are more so on the right. And, even some of the stuff, man, that, the social stuff that I'd be like, whatever. Those have become really important because you can see the left is forcing that on people. It's no longer, hey, you get to choose. Now it's, if you don't believe this, you're a bad person and you're wrong. And no, that's not the case. And, again, there are certain fundamental values of America. We are why we are who we are for a reason. And you don't want those to erode away. And the left is literally attacking those, So even though we might disagree on stuff, I think we all see the importance of opposing the authoritarianism and, for some folks on the left, literally destroying the basis of the country. I think that's something that we can all agree on, that we can't have that.
Yeah, I saw the video when you won your mayoral election. You had the Democratic candidate, I think, next to you, and you had your arm around her. Was that her?
No, that's my wife. That's not your wife. Candidate. Oh man, those are fighting words too.
That's hilarious. Okay,
you kissed her.
The way you were talking, you're kind of snuggling up to you, like, I really want to just. I felt like I was like, man, you got your arm around the candidate. That's really nice of you. Okay, that's your wife.
If you ever come to town, I'll introduce you to my wife and tell you that you said that.
Well, that's your wife's. Because my next comment was going to be, like, compared to you, she's like, looks like a plush toy. She's so small compared to you.
Yes,
Yes, quite a size
she's
difference.
about 5'2", yeah.
Well, anyway, your attitude towards your opponent was beautiful, and you were talking about, how we don't have democracy, we don't have freedom to voice our ideas and opinions and talk about those and debate those things. Where do you see failures from the conservative side of things in that area? It does feel like a lot of people are getting on this. It's like they're weary and exhausted of trying to talk across the aisle. And what's your encouragement in that?
First of all, my opponent during the general election never talked about the things that are being talked about right now. She talked about you need to raise taxes, which I disagreed with. That was probably our biggest point of contention. This other stuff, she never talked about, critical race theory in schools or, defunding the police. And
probably hard to win in Tennessee with those.
Yeah, there's this huge departure now. The Democratic Party of just a few years ago, that's not the same thing now. They've gone off the rails. By the same point in time, at the same point, I think that, conservatives need, like when we talk about illegal immigration, you have to, you're not talking about brown people. You're just talking about a process that you'd like everybody, to go through so you don't come here and live off the system, for me. But when we look at that, we think about Latino people, they're Catholic, they're pro-life. They should be conservatives. They're hardworking people, and that's actually something that I think the right has allowed the left to control the narrative of, if you oppose legal immigration, you oppose these people. No, you don't oppose these people. It's just you want to see this, right? And it's things like that. It's the same with Black folks. We want Black folks to be conservatives, to understand, and that it's all about uplifting yourself. You should be rewarded for hard work. Instead we get into these, whatever, and it feels like you alienate wide swaths of the population. And I think that's been a mistake. And I think that there needs to be much more outreach and much more better articulation of the ideas. What we're talking about is opportunity. It really is. To me, that's the most important thing, is economic opportunity. And the free enterprise system provides that. Socialism does not. Okay. And, what we've allowed to happen is that the left has been able, to capture those people, I think, by offering them a false promise. So, to me, that's the thing is, being able to articulate and, say, I don't care what you look like. I don't care what where you come from. I don't care. I think that everybody deserves the opportunity to better their lives.
You ever have any problems with too many liberal Californians moving there? You guys ever consider building a wall or anything to stop that?
We do have a lot of people flocking here, and they are coming, I believe. They're escaping high tax jurisdictions, and we welcome them. At the same time, it's like, we are who we are for a reason. And, there's a concern here that folks are going to bring their political stuff with them instead of leaving it behind. They're going to bring what they're trying to escape with them, which is going to change what we have here. So that is a concern, but it is interesting because the folks that I talk to, that they get it. They want to move here because they're trying to get away from what they see as the insanity, and they're attracted to this place. It's one of those things where, I guess we want people to come here, and we want them to come, for the right reasons, but don't change us into what you're trying to escape from. And I think for the most part, that's actually how the folks that are moving here.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask if you noticed people assimilating well and eating a lot of hot chicken and barbecue, or if they,
Opening up their vegan restaurants.
yeah,
Oof.
sushi restaurants and taco stands.
sushi's
I
good.
don't know. Sushi's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm a sushi and taco.
Yeah. Hey man, I eat everything. It's all good. So.
What do you think's like one of the biggest problems right now in the country? I mean, what's the thing that gets under your skin a lot that's going on in the news? Lay the smack down.
Well, let me start here. The spending by the federal government is going to end very badly. You can't have $30 trillion in debt and have these massive spending packages and not think that there's going to be problems. The price inflation that we see, the consumer price inflation, is directly correlated to the fact that they're just printing money, and the debt is exploding, and that's bad. And it's not, we always talk about our kids paying it back, can't pay it back. I mean, it's too much at this point. So I think that's going to have some serious economic consequences. I think the division around the country is horrible. The fact that we can't talk anymore, that's bad. I do see, with our young people, the fact that there's only one way of thinking. Critical thinking is discouraged, and I think that's not good for our future generations. With everything that's happened with COVID and the government's reaction to that, I think that's very bad as well, because it's like Rahm Emanuel said, never let a good crisis go to waste. What seems now like it's never let a good crisis end. And there's, when government clamps down, what happens is as the crisis releases, it'll loosen, but it never goes back to where it was. And I think that we're seeing that already. And again, with the CDC and everybody calling for all these restrictions and mandates again, I'm worried that they're going to clamp down hard for a second time, and not release as much as they should, which would be to go back here. So there are a lot of things that really bother me. But at the same time, we have the legacy in this country of individual liberty, of the free enterprise system. And I think there are enough people that still strongly believe in that, especially in our area here in the South, that there's still, and there's, no matter what, there's always more good than bad in America. We do have our challenges, but I think that we'll work through them.
Did you find through the COVID lockdowns in your guys' area that, was it driven by the state? Was it driven by the county? What was the most restrictive? I know here in California, it was like the state was more restrictive in a lot of ways than the federal government, and tried to override the local, the local areas. And it was really the sheriff's departments that had to fight back again, from in various counties that were the ones that were standing up and saying, we're not going to enforce these. Right.
Here, it was really strange. Because the governor we have a weird system here. The health departments are all under the state except for the big counties. Okay, so there's like 6 that have their own independent health departments, and statutorily they can kind of do whatever they want. Which now, we all looked at that and said, wait a second, literally when you look at the state code, if you have a board of health, which the county actually creates or not creates, and we had one in Knox County because no one ever knew this, but if you looked at the board of health, there was nothing they couldn't do. They were there to protect public health and safety, and it didn't. We came to realize it didn't matter whether we were under state of emergency, whether we were in a pandemic. It didn't matter. So our county commission, and they were the ones issuing the orders. Actually, I sit on the board of health. There were a lot of like 8-1 votes where they would vote to, limit capacity of restaurants, and the one dissenting vote was me. They voted for a mask mandate. The one dissenting vote was me. And eventually, though, the county commission, looked at that and realized, oh my goodness, it wasn't even so much the fact what was happening then at the height of the pandemic, but looking forward to like, oh my gosh, you realize that, these folks, and I'm not saying they're bad folks, it's just the potential. They could of their own accord, because their health orders trumped county ordinances. So they could ban sugary drinks on their own. They could declare firearms a public health crisis, like President Biden has recently done. They get sued for that, but still they could do it. So the county commission made them an advisory board and took away their power to make policy. But there was a lot of stuff going on here just politically. The laws concerning emergencies and public health and all that, they're not really well written. And the legislature is reviewing those because no one ever thought you'd have anything like this, of course. We were much more lenient overall as a state, though, than, say, the federal government. Even when Florida was getting all the headlines, for Governor DeSantis doing a lot of things that he did, we'd already done that in Tennessee. We just didn't get the headlines for it.
Here at the Babylon Bee, we wear many hats.
Indeed. In fact, we wear many sick lids and tight caps.
Seamus didn't like my pun.
I wish I wasn't here right now.
You were so excited.
I was so excited about
to do
it.
that.
Well, I said I got a great joke about this, and I figured y'all would already know what it was. Very sad. Oh, look, we have hats in our store. Lots of them.
Can I be real? I was just jealous of the pun. It was pretty solid.
I know.
It was good.
We've got trucker hats. We've got flex fit hats. We've got dad hats. We've got black hats.
Mom hats?
Mom hats with camo. We have more trucker hats. Look at all these hats.
All these trucker hats.
We have a lot of hats.
I bet the truckers are mad that the world has taken over their hats.
Yeah, and they're like,
those were our hats.
Back in my day, I was the real original trucker. Yeah,
But
are
hey-
there hipster truckers?
Probably.
Anyway, be a imitation trucker with a trucker hat.
Yeah.
Or if you're a real trucker,
You can get one too. And
Buy our
you
hats.
can get these all in our store at shop.babylonbee.com.
Do it.
I really like to ask our guests, and I'm hoping I get something good here. Do you have any cool stories? From your wrestling career, there has to be some great behind the scenes. What's a favorite story you tell around the campfire? Like at a get together, you're like, my pants fell down, or just some, what's a funny story?
Yeah, don't have any of those. There's actually one pretty good one. We were doing a show at the pond in Anaheim, California. And next morning I had an early flight out of LAX. It's about 45 minutes from Anaheim back to the airport in Los Angeles. So after my match, I'm trying to get out of the building as quickly as I could to avoid the crowd leaving. So I took off my stuff and just threw it in the bag, didn't shower, just put on my workout clothes, drive back to the hotel. And now this is back when I was still wearing like the full face mask, and I'd always wear black paint around my eyes to black my eyes. So it looked like I had runny mascara going down it looked kind of like Alice Cooper, right? I also had like my really long hair, right? So I had that pulled back in a ponytail. And I weighed about 315 pounds at the time, as the biggest I think I ever got. So you can imagine the looks I got as I'm walking through the airport hotel. I'm in a tank top and shorts, still sweating with mascara running down my face and my hair pulled back in a ponytail. So I get the key to my room, and I go up to my room. I open the door, and you know how the hotel room doors, they slam back in your face. So I kind of throw my bags in, and I hear screaming coming out of the room, and I look up, and there's like an elderly couple that are in the room as I throw my bags in, and the guy, they're like both on the bed like this, going, no. And of course they were also, I think they were from Japan because they were screaming at me in a foreign language. So anyway, I got back down to the front desk, and the poor manager, is on the phone. Yeah, sure, we'll comp your room. Everything's going to be fine. Please don't call the police.
So they gave someone's room key? Is that what happened?
But they gave me a key to the room that was already occupied.
Oh gosh.
But can you imagine? You're just hanging out in your hotel room.
Yeah.
And this guy, he's 6'8", 315 pounds.
Yeah.
With mascara, comes walking in your room.
He just throws a bag in there.
dramatic with that.
And you just threw your bag in there?
I just threw my bags in, yeah. What's he doing here?
They're visiting America for the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
Kane kicks the door down. Oh, gosh.
It's Bane.
It's Bane. All right, well, let's move into our subscriber portion. We've got some questions from our subscribers.
Yeah, and we're going to ask you our 10 questions.
And yeah, so let's do it.
Let's go. All right.
Coming up next for Babylon Bee subscribers.
Who in politics would you most like to choke slam?
Figuratively.
Metaphorically.
With facts.
With facts and logic.
If you were president, would you use an executive order to ban income tax?
What I would actually do is I would.
How would you reconcile the tension between libertarianism and the Bible's command for Christians to obey earthly authorities?
That when we talk about it's Romans 13.
Ooh, dropping it.
Enjoying this hard-hitting interview? Become a Babylon Bee subscriber to hear the rest of this conversation. Go to babylonbee.com/plans for full-length, ad-free podcasts. Kyle and Ethan would like to thank Seth Dillon for paying the bills, Adam Ford for creating their job, the other writers for tirelessly pitching headlines, the subscribers, and you, the listener. Until next time, this is Dave D'Andrea, the voice of the Babylon Bee.